Number 1, Miss Mattie Merrywinkle by Annie White. Until recently, Miss Mattie Merrywinkle worked in the pharmacy attached to the health centre on the Coronation Council estate. Verruca plasters, nappy rash cream, prophylactics, etc. were all handed over discreetly with enquiries as to Dad's dementia, Pauline's piles, etc., accompanied by such a genuine smile reaching all the way up to the crinkly corners of her vivid blue eyes that her adoring public called her Miss Merry Twinkle. Now, in response to the COVID crisis, Miss Mattie has joined the army of NHS volunteers and can be seen out and about the estate on her ancient butcher's boy's bicycle, delivering prescriptions to the housebound. She has swapped her beige bry nylon tunic for an oversized sunshine yellow anorak, purchased from the bargain rail at the local charity shop, and now Miss Mattie's pride and joy. Her wispy grey hair is tucked into what the Woman's Weekly pattern promised to be a jaunty beret, but which, due to a mix-up with knitting needle sizes, turned out to be an all-enveloping snood, fashioned in a riot of multicoloured yarns. Her stick-like legs, protruding from a baggy pair of brown corduroy knickerbockers, are encased in scarlet wooden tights and tucked into a dilapidated pair of trainers. In fact, anyone observing Miss Mattie pedalling furiously past the windows, and many temporarily imprisoned small children press their noses up against the window daily in the hope of doing so, could be forgiven for thinking that a very large chicken has just flown by. In addition to the stick-thin legs and the bony hands gripping the handlebars, the little old lady's pink-rimmed spectacles are held in place by a beak-like nose. Intended recipients, alerted by the persistent ringing of her bell, are greeted with an "Hey up, how you doing, love?" and a merry twinkle smile. Number 2, Mr. Pendledump by Tamara Roberts. Mr. Pendledump is a very strange man to behold. In fact, he resembles a peach in many ways, both in shape and in colour. A man with his coloration could easily be mistaken for a peach, for you see his skin was a bland orange that looked ripe enough to peel. Doubling the resemblance of a peach was his shape, especially in his waddling walk, and his rounded stomach leading the way for the rest of the body. Although, dear reader, comparing one's walk to a peach is very unrealistic, as peaches tend to roll. His pastimes including standing at podiums, spreading the key message of his self-importance. For, you see, he's a very proud man, important man, a man with so many features, one cannot ignore his scraggly coiffed hair that a simple gust of wind could blow away. A sheer will of force must keep it in place as he focuses all his willpower through squinted eyes. He is a man that will admonish his audience with a wave of his miniature digits, spreading the gospel through his drivelled speech, much resembling a looping trombone. He will cast down those who oppose him with falsifying statements, for he is the one and only trustworthy Mr. Pendledump. Number 3, Dizzy Doddle by Araf Chohan. Dizzy Doddle, a nickname, his real name being Dan Doddle, in itself amusing enough, is a headmaster at a local school in Middlesbrough. Everyone knows him, as after a major school fire he was interviewed by local TV and gained instant notoriety due to his character, physical appearance and clothing, all combining to make him an instantly recognisable individual and the talk of the town. Dizzy Doddle has a huge grin which is likened to that of a giant toad, and his laughter is known for his hyena-like sounds. Plus, with bushy eyebrows, he can't be missed. Although very robust in stature, he is also a very rotund man, in his 50s, and the sort of fellow who has been plump all his life. Facially, he has rosy cheeks and in part a reddish complexion, superimposed on his otherwise pale skin, giving the impression he is in an inebriated state, although he isn't. He bellows rather than speaks, and glares rather than looks. With his ginger hair, he is a unique character, anywhere to be seen, let alone in the world of education. Together with his flamboyant clothes, colourful shirts and matching ties with different light-coloured trousers, and different coloured blazers with matching handkerchiefs in his top pocket, he certainly wasn't conventional in his dress fashion, to say the least. T.T., as he was also known, had deep green eyes and a freckled face, with a large bulbous nose and flared nostrils, surrounding his cavernous nasal cavities. In addition, he had long earlobes dangling from quite large flappy ears, akin to a mini version of Dumbo. Sprouting a large black mole on his left cheekbone and a deep dimple on his elongated chin, all in all, T.T. was a sight to behold. Number 4. She, by Peter Hughes. She sat in front of the mirror and stared at her reflection. How is it possible I only got 30 likes? Her thoughts explored further. I mean, my tan was perfectly sprayed and flawless, teeth white and wide. She had spent hundreds of pounds on hair extensions, highlights, getting the latest celebrity cut, false nails, and a pedicure. It simply made no sense that even the man she was hoping to impress hadn't even liked it or showed his approval. Just the same old nobodies and late-night inbox specialists that she didn't have to make any effort for them to be fighting for her attention. Her outfit that had taken so long to pick out but was the right choice for the lighting and the show home environment she had meticulously created for the perfect shot. Excellent on trend filter choice, the social media platform was fabulous. All the latest up-and-coming celebrities were racking up huge followers by doing nothing more, if not less, than she had done. It made no sense. Her thoughts turned to the man she had done it for. People seemed to be drawn to him. In her mind, it was a great match. Both their online presence would have been boosted. Win-win, she thought. As he stood up, his mum's lifeless hand stayed where he had left it. Now cold and by her side on the hospital bed, he'd have given the world for the touch of a human hand on his shoulder at that moment. She sat in front of the mirror and stared at her reflection. Don't let your crown fall, princess. You can do better than that. She bowed her head, opened her phone, and scrolled again and again, looking for the best match for her now he'd let her down. Number 5. He, by William Cornthwaite. He would, on meeting people for the first time, but before shaking of the hands, ask one simple but oh so cunning question. What type of person are you? He would find that the recipient, often as not, will be taken aback. But reader, you will find, if you ever adopted his approach, that the not surprising answer would be a good one. He would then, with a smile as broad as the gulf between the answer he heard and the answer he wanted to hear, hold out his hand and shake it vigorously before saying, I wonder what type of person you will be in time. Come to think me to be. He spoke his truth, freely giving out his thoughts, solicited or not, with an honesty that was either refreshing or almost bordering on offence. His mantra was simple. If you did not like it, don't engage with him. I remember clearly as a young man sitting watching him play dominoes with his cronies, when one of his friends said, not a lot of people like him. I shot back, well, you're here. His crony looked at me, looked back at him, thought for a moment and said, yes, we are, aren't we? That would be how he would have wanted it. He never cosseted company, but immensely enjoyed the company who had decided to keep the company of a good man. So as you will find, as I take you back along his road, one that hurt, one with no turnings back or any byways, but one he was charmed to walk over. That his death, ending up just a statistic on the register of that extraordinary time of the great C-19 pandemic, was one that ultimately achieved great affectionate lifetime friendships. Number 6. Julia by Jody Bradshaw. Nothing was ever straightforward for Julia, and a day spent repairing herself mentally and physically was to be expected, like the time she broke her knuckle while sitting on the loo during the virus. With the combination of a dodgy sliding toilet seat and a fear of overrunning the bath, Julia had managed to slice open her knuckle on the Wayfair metal shelf that had taken her over 4 months to save for. With only the cat for support, Julia had to recall what she'd seen on an old episode of Casualty and save herself. She had impressed herself by successfully predicting that the elderly lady wouldn't actually trip over her jigsaw puzzle, but would in fact slice her hand whilst opening a can of tinned pineapple chunks. Julia had channeled her inner Bear Grylls and created a makeshift bandage and sling from a dressing gown belt and a pillowcase that had luckily fallen out of the airing cupboard in all the commotion. It was purple with the face of a cat on it, and it was a secret Santa present from her boss. She knew it was from him because he hated cats and he'd forgotten to take the gift tag off it, and she could just see that his mum had given it to him the year before. Julia was happy the cat was there for company, and it was times like these that she felt the suffocating loneliness. Over the years, her natural ability to offend people had caused her circle of friends to quickly become a semicircle. Julia was aware that this was the story of her life, and she was destined to die alone on the toilet like Elvis. That was if the wonky toilet seat would stay in position for long enough. Number 7. Mr. Frank by Janice English. Mr. Frank, OBE, the godfather of UK optical manufacturing, leads the Norville Company as the 4th generation experts in providing the finest spectacles from his laboratory in the old town of Gloucester. His delighted customers include the highest in the land, including members of the royal family. A truly Christian man who gives his time freely for charitable purposes and for furthering knowledge of optical manufacturing, Mr. Frank is a past master of the Worshipful Company of Spectacle Makers. He is a regular attendee at the court, which meets in Apothecary's Hall in Blackfriars Lane. He is a benefactor to Gloucester Rugby Club and Gloucester Cathedral, and a generous funder of the Optical Workers Benevolent Fund, which supports those who work in optical manufacturing at times of need. His knowledge of ophthalmic lenses and spectacles is unrivaled, with an understanding of every lens and its application for sport, night driving, computer work, near vision, and even migraine relief. Lens coatings provide the very best performance for anti-glare, impact resistance, anti-smear. He's the man to ask. The first point of call for opticians looking to help dyslexics with coloured tints to ease the words from skipping around the page, ask Mr. Frank. Always suited and booted for work with a sombre suit and well-polished shoes, he is keen to welcome the local MP to visit his lab and see proper manufacturing taking place. Mr. Frank is kind and self-effacing. His generous deeds include bottles of spirits for competing businesses at times of need. They are discreetly dispatched, with no desire for recognition or praise. He lives very modestly in Gloucester, with his wife of more than 50 years, a local florist, and together they grow potatoes and beetroot at the end of their garden. Number 8. Birdie by an unknown writer. She was just under 5 foot high. A slim, dark-eyed girl, she resembled a mouse just looking for crumbs. Her mother had several children, but Birdie was her pet. She was controllable, gentle and mild. She truly believed her father owned Bird's custard factory. She had never met him, but had been given his name. She had taken to shoplifting as if it was her chosen craft. She was fast and had a swift action to transfer from counter to pocket while maintaining the sweetest smile. Her loosely held together family lived in a back-to-back cottage beside the Grand Union Canal. Birdie had many uncles she would dance and lift her skirt for 5p. She was sharp and knew the knocks of school inspectors, social workers, and welfare officers. She would dart like a swift. What little education she possessed, she used to avoid authorities at any cost. By 15, she had lost her virginity to Uncle Frank, and thankfully she had bled the baby out and left the canal fish to tidy up. It was the wonderful hot summer of 74. She begged by day and danced by night. I met her on Christmas Day in 1980 at the free dinner Salvation Army Tabernacle. She was thankful as she had only a few pounds left from her prison discharge grant. I often saw her in the cathedral grounds, drinking her white lightning or chasing the dragon. I know what became of her, but I ran out of words. Number 9, Fennel Green by Charlotte Corrigan. Fennel Green was a teenage girl wrapped in the facade of an eco-warrior. Her nails were well manicured, and her mousy hair was scraped back in a messy bun. She often wore an ethnic poncho jacket with long fringes that swayed in the unforgiving wind. She was accustomed to wearing gladiator sandals, regardless of the weather. She used her body to expose her ethical priorities. Today her T-shirt showed she supported the Green Alliance, whoever they were. Her boyfriend jeans hung loosely around her hips and displayed her Victoria's Secret's underwear like a badge of pride. Yes, Fennel was a practical environmentalist, but she had a glamorous side. Her pallid skin seemed to indicate her indoor persona. She was a green crusader who liked to spend most of her time indoors. Today she was suffering in particular from allergies as she blew her nose with such a force that she alarmed the pigeons on the pylons overhead. Fennel was a regular user of Twitter, tweeting about such matters as climate change, conservation, and urban sprawl. Today would be no exception as she de-sleeved her MacBook and started to rant about the most recent issue to date. Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok served to propagate her wokerati views. A tear emerged from her eye as she uploaded a picture of people daring to drink from plastic bottles, as she drew a link between the melting of the ice caps and people's selfish purchasing of water in plastic receptacles. Dabbing her moist face, she opened another window on her laptop and booked a long-haul flight to Australia, where she intended to battle forest fires and save the remaining population of koala bears. It was stressful saving the planet, but Fennel sighed and remembered what Emma Watson had said in a recent speech. If not me, who? Number 10, Aloysius Shard by Patrick Hogan. The room was high-ceilinged and dimly lit with cheap interwar mock timber hardboard panelling to deceive the masses. Shard stood half-bending over his boss at a table at one end of the room. A tall and thin man, slightly bent since his prostate operation, Aloysius Shard was obsequious with the man, although in his usually daily life vain and self-regarding. Considering himself attractive, despite a sallow and patchy complexion and thinning salt and pepper hair, he always had an eye and leer for the ladies. Dressed in his tired grey accountant suit, he listened to the president mumble on about his latest venture, livery company, investment opportunity, charity, naval reunion, whatever he'd got into to add to his collection of chairmanships, trusteeships, or other compensations for being otherwise ill-educated. Shard, of course, allowed his mind to wander, thinking of his own rise to greatness, in his own mind's eye, from a poor beginning in Borough Market, his profitable but unsuccessful marriages to his current post of Chief Executive Officer of Drainsfold Borough Council, the downside of which was paying lip service to this older man and his insistence at being addressed as President rather than Mayor or Councillor. Returning to his office, Shard slumped onto the cushion he kept on his Windsor chair and, sliding down in the seat, hoisted his brown-shoed feet up onto the desktop. Admiring his argyle socks on his bony ankles, he sighed and wondered whether he should persevere with the moustache he was trying to grow. Pulling his favourite mirror from his desk drawer, he pulled what he thought might be a suave Errol Flynn expression, but saw only an unflattering Florentine portrait with bum pluff caught under the nose, studying his long bony bare fingers for some reassurance instead. He recalled the homily from his geography teacher that real men don't wear jewellery, and to boot, the university admission that it was only the lower orders had dirty fingernails. Rushing out to wash his hands, he resolved to get a manicure and a shave, and maybe some hair dye. Number 11. Roger Federer by Simon Cowell. First, there is Federer's sublime fitness. Any Federer analysis must also discuss the man himself. Roger Federer has had all of the qualities that sportsmen treasure in a champion. He is humble, gracious, tenacious, kind, caring, competitive, and an extremely hard worker. Looks-wise, he carries himself very royally, yet very down to earth. That speaks for how he wants to look. He cares so much about his hair. This speaks for his need for perfection in everything, including style and so on. What I'm trying to say is that he carries his perfection, seeking quality, to everywhere and not just for tennis. In victory, he does not gloat. In defeat, he makes no excuses, crediting his conquerors. Off the court, he is a family man who gives time and money to numerous charities. In short, he is the antitype to the tennis brat that seemed to dominate the men's scene for so many years. This well-developed character is probably why many tennis writers have been inclined to anoint Federer as the GOAT, and it is an essential part of any Federer analysis. Who Federer is a person who comes through when he is on the court. There is a dark side, as no true great can get by without one, as nice guys do come last. Therefore, to win, Federer can be ruthless, scheming, dangerous man, whose entire game plan is to make you feel uncomfortable and make you do things that will make you uncomfortable. He is quoted as saying, "Make your opponents do things that they don't want to do," lest we forget the Araf clothing range. Still, he is the nicest man you're ever likely to meet. No book unsigned, no selfie untaken, and a smile to melt the very coldest heart. Number 12. Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson by Sheena Blackhall. Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson, otherwise known as Bojo, was born in New York City but educated in Eton by his upper-middle-class parents. A fervent cyclist while astride his vehicle of choice, he resembled a rather unstable haystack on wheels. He was for a time the mayor of London, where he exerted minimum damage, and so, when seen from some lights, that stage of his career was a success. He also occasionally suffered from an unfortunate illness, also shared by a senior member of the royal family, known as foot-in-mouth disease. Papua New Guinea's High Commission protested after Bojo compared the Tories' off-changing leadership to cannibalism in Papua Guinea. In his time he rode to hounds, tally-hoing with the cream of Somerset. His earliest recorded ambition was to be world king. As a child he confessed to being extremely spotty, extremely nerdy, and horribly swotty. Bojo was a member of the Bullingdon Club, which called outsiders plebs or grockles, and the police were called plods. They were noted for drunken parties and rioting. There is the whiff of the swashbuckler still hanging around Boris in his drag-through-a-hedge backwards attire as he struts his stuff on the British political stage. He has been heavily into his conjugals throughout his much-married, many-mistress life, ergo he will not depart this world like a rotten potato, but leave many aftershoots, a la King Charles II. Bojo shares the charm of King Charles II, although unlike that monarch, he doesn't allow the Downing Street cat to defecate in his house. But who could dislike such an eloquent man? A man who refers to his adversaries as great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies, although Jeremy Corbyn, who he described as a big girl's blouse, may not agree.